What's going on, guys? Today we got a great episode with Polina Pompliano. Polina is the founder and CEO of The Profile. You got to go read it. Go to readtheprofile.com. Today we talk about a couple of topics I think you're going to be interested in. Bitcoin. Why is the price going down? What's going on? And should you be concerned? We also talk about DOGE and how they are slashing spending and some of the ripple effects, both in the local Washington economy, but also nationally, and what that could mean for you as an investor. And then we also talk about Fort Knox and is the gold there? People want to know, where is the gold at? Fort Knox audit is all the rage, and everyone wants to know what's going to happen there. This episode is full of insights. I hope you guys enjoy it. Here's my latest conversation with Polina Pompliano. All right, Polina, what's the first topic?
All right, so Bitcoin is down this morning. It's hovering around 95,500. I was reading some media reports that said that the reason it's dampening is because people aren't satisfied with what Trump has done.
Stop. This is crazy. Listen, Bitcoin trades like a macro asset. Right now, there is increasing bearishness on stocks. 47% of investors, based on the survey from last week, now think that stocks will be lower 6 months from now. So naturally, if people are bearish on stocks, they're getting bearish on cryptocurrency, et cetera. This is the exact moment where you got to not only refuse to get lulled to sleep. Do not get lulled to sleep, because when Bitcoin gets you lulled to sleep, it then usually explodes in either direction. And so it's kind of like, now's the time to pay attention. It could go down, it could go up. But the second thing also is when everyone else is bearish, that's the time to actually be bullish, right? Everyone else is scared. Well, there's probably opportunity out there. And you see this in the stock market. You also see this, I think, in Bitcoin, et cetera. You used to have to buy Bitcoin for $106,000, $107,000. Now you can buy it for $95,000. That's called a discount, right? My buddy Mark Yusko always says that investing is the only place where when there's a discount, people run out of the store. Usually people run in the store. They're excited. So I think that's a big part of this. The second thing is, yes, Trump on the campaign trail talked about how he's going to protect Bitcoin, do all this stuff. Bitcoin is up. I think it was like $70,000, $69,000 on November 1st. It's up to almost 100K. It is appreciated significantly, almost 50% since the election. So when you look at that, you're like, it's not that people are disappointed. It's actually that it ran up in anticipation and it's a natural cooling off period. And the last thing I would say is in prior bull markets, we saw multiple 30% drawdowns. So what you would see is 2017, Bitcoin went from 1,000 to 20,000, ran all the way up. It would cool off 30% drawdowns. We're not seeing that. We're seeing like 15% drawdowns, maybe max 20%. And so what that tells me is that there's a lot of buying demand. Every time Bitcoin gets to 90K, all of a sudden it's back to 95K. There's a ton of buying demand. And so what you're seeing, in my opinion, is you're seeing a compression of the volatility. And if you think about, where did Bitcoin bottom in the last bear market? It bottomed around $16,000, $16,500, whatever. It's now at, 100.
That's a far cry from 95,000.
People have asked me about price, future performance. Look, I'm not predicting anything, but if you said to me I had to pick a price that I think Bitcoin likely is, directly going to go towards, I've always said 150,000. And a lot of people are like, that's so bearish. That's so bearish. I see 200, 300, 500, like all these crazy numbers. I would love for it to go there. I'm in the boat. Let's go. Let's go as far as you guys want. But in the last cycle, Bitcoin bottomed about 3,200 and it went to 69,000. And so if you just kind of cut that in half, I don't know, it's like 10, 12%, X from there. So I've just always thought like 10X off the bottom's about 150,000. Maybe it's a little bit higher, whatever. But like that is the dampening of volatility to the upside. And then you're not seeing the 30% drawdowns. You're kind of seeing these 15% drawdowns. And so you're getting the squeeze where it's trading more in kind of a band. Now, on one hand, there's a lot of Bitcoiners that be like, I really want Bitcoin to go up. I want Bitcoin to go up. Like, I let it go higher. On the other hand, there's a lot of people coming into Bitcoin pushing the price higher because now they're like, oh, it's unlikely that Bitcoin is going to have 50% drawdowns in a day. There is, again, that dampening of volatility. So as you get mass adoption, you're going to get less and less asymmetry to the asset. But that's how it should work. You get paid the reward for the risk you take. It was way riskier to buy Bitcoin in 2016 than it is to buy it today in 2025. And so I just think that people always want to kind of get into this game of, I wanted to go up as much as it went up in the past. But you're not taking the same risk you took in the past. So you should expect it to go up less. Now, all that said, I think Bitcoin is very well positioned. We just saw Mubadala, Abu Dhabi's sovereign wealth fund, and one of their funds come out and say that they now own about $500 million worth of the Bitcoin ETF. Huge deal. I think it's the Wisconsin Investment Board. They just like tripled their position in the ETFs. You have Russia that's now come out and said that they're mining it. They're using it for transactions. You have El Salvador still buying Bitcoin. You have many other countries around the world that are all kind of playing and dabbling in different ways. I think the UAE's got a partnership with publicly traded miner where they're mining Bitcoin, etc. So like this is happening. The number one question in the world is the United States going to buy? And I think if they do not buy, if they do not establish the strategic reserve, that's where you'll get that kind of letdown. People will be upset. They'll be like, hey, I was promised something, I didn't get it. If it happens, even though it doesn't happen in the first 30 days, it happens in the first 100 days or whatever, I think people will be euphoric and excited, and this will all be kind of a nothing burger.
Got it. Let's talk about DOGE. The Department of Government Efficiency said that it has found $55 billion in savings through a combination of efforts, including a reduction in the federal workforce. It said it estimated it had realized $55 billion in savings by canceling or renegotiating leases and contracts, selling assets, canceling grants, finding regulatory savings, making programmatic changes to the government, and reducing the workforce. I understand that this is very disruptive and they are able to save so much money of waste. But when something is this disruptive, obviously it's going to break some things. Do you think there's going to be a downside to all these like radical changes?
Any downside is worth it. Any downside is worth it because it is micro problems to solve a macro problem, which is a really important differentiation.
It's like when you say short-term pain, long-term.
Of course. It's like when you have a fat kid or a fat person. What do they have to do? They got to first stop eating bad food. You got to eat healthy. You got to eat a clean diet. You got to start to actually take care of yourself, right? All of a sudden, your physiological kind of metrics, et cetera, start to improve a little bit. But it hurts. Your body is starved for, it wants sugar. It wants Coca-Cola. It wants carbs. It wants all this stuff. At the same time, though, you can't just sit there and just say, hey, I'm going to cut out all this and have a clean diet. You also then have to burn off the fat that you currently have. So you got to start to work out. You got to go, you got to lift weights. You got to run. You got to do all this stuff. And so that's what we're going through is we got to wake up at 6 a.m. We got to go for a run before work. That's not fun. Nobody wants to do it at first, but over time you start to build that muscle memory. You start to get your body used to waking up early. You start to get used to working out. You start getting used to, hey, when it's time to eat, I don't reach for a cookie or ice cream. Instead, I reach for some healthy food, maybe a chicken breast and some broccoli. And so that's what DOGE is ultimately doing. And the problem is that he's getting yelled at and screamed at from the bag of cookies and from the ice cream and from all the people who are going to be on the opposite end of this. And so when I look at DOGE, I simply say to myself, people who are trying to stop their progress are likely the people who are most benefiting from the status quo. And so we just have to ask ourselves, do we want a small, efficient government or do we want a big, bloated bureaucracy? It's very clear what the two differences are here. Now, to your point, there's going to be pain. There are going to be people that can point to issues that get created, but those are micro problems. Do I hope that they happen? Of course not. I want there to be no issues or anything. But if you're moving quickly and you're making radical change, then yes, there's going to be issues, but those issues are worth it because they're micro problems in light of us solving this big macro problem, which is probably one of the single most important threats to the United States. What do you think?
I don't know. Nothing like this has ever been done before. So hopefully it's a good thing. Obviously, like tightening the budget is a good thing.
What is your biggest concern about them doing this? I don't even know if you're actually concerned, but like, what is like you think?
No, I think you don't know what you don't know. So going into the government and like, firing all these people and like doing all this stuff. Yes, you're cutting out the bloat, but maybe you're also accidentally breaking some stuff that you don't even know that you're breaking.
But I think that's the point is it's not like they're shutting down the payments to the federal employees and all of a sudden the payroll system breaks. Right. What they're doing is they're shutting down stuff that people are pointing to like, this is a problem. And you ask yourself, why are we sending money there? Right. Like the foreign aid stuff is a great example where should there be foreign aid? Of course, there's situations where there should be foreign aid. Should we be handing out money like it's candy all around the world? Of course not. And so if you start with a zero-based budget, that's the key thing here. If you go into a business, usually what most executives do is a very watered down version of kind of tightening your belt. So what do they say? Say, okay, give me the P&L from last year. I'm going to take that P&L. Okay, we spent $2 million on marketing. Could we get away with only spending $1.8 million? Okay, I saved 10%. Now that's 10% savings in our marketing budget. I saved $200K. That's a good sign. Instead, what really radical executives do is they come in and they say, we're going zero-based budget. We're going to start from zero. Bring to me any idea you have for a marketing budget. But we're going to start from zero. You don't get what you got last year. We're not going to do a 10% reduction. We're going to 100% reduction, and we're going to build it back up from scratch. And then usually what you find is instead of having only 10% savings, now all of a sudden you have like a 60% savings. Because if you were trying to just cut, it's not nearly as effective as rebuilding from scratch. And so that would be nearly impossible for the government to do. But I actually think that would be the single best solution is take the annual budget and say everyone goes to zero. Come and pitch on why you should get whatever money you think that you want. And my guess is that 50% of the money that we spend on. Why 50%? Because I figured that 1 out of every 2 things that we're spending money on, probably we don't need to spend money on. Is it nice that we spend money on it? Of course, the people who are involved think that it's nice that we're spending money on, right? They'll moralize and make these arguments, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, the true functions of the United States government, it seems like we've pursued all these other things, but we haven't provided the core functions. Homes are unaffordable. The border was unsecure. People, literally, if you go look at the surveys, feel like the past is brighter than the future.
Yeah.
They're losing hope. The dollar is being devalued. All these problems, right? I think about veteran suicide. Think about the homelessness on the street. Things like the bridge in Baltimore is still not built. The permit issue in LA, Flint water. Remember that whole issue? How about the crumbling infrastructure of roads, bridges, trains? You go through all this stuff. You're like, dude, we got a ton of things that we can improve
it's like
here.
the foundational things need to be improved.
And so again, it goes back to there's no right answer. If you go to the extreme on one end, everyone's mad. If you go to the extreme on the other end, everyone's mad.
I just think it's going to be an interesting experiment of whether you can run a country like a business.
Well, if you are optimizing to balance a budget, you have to run the country like a business.
So is that Trump is aiming to balance the budget?
Here's what's fascinating. I mean, I think we talked about it on this episode every week. I definitely made a couple of videos. I was shocked that neither Harris, Biden, or Trump were promising to balance the budget. That was not a campaign promise.
Yeah.
But it feels like because of the momentum of this, now all of a sudden I hear people talking about, are we going to balance the budget?
Like there's a path to that.
It's no secret that Bitcoin ETFs have taken Wall Street by storm. With over $35 billion in assets in just 1 year, it's become the most successful ETF launch in history. My partner Bitwise is the first and only Bitcoin ETF provider to openly publish its Bitcoin wallet addresses, allowing anyone to verify the fund's holdings. I believe this level of transparency is exactly the kind of innovation that only crypto makes possible. Bitwise is also the only ETF issuer that is a crypto specialist asset manager, meaning their team solely focuses on Bitcoin and they have the research, education, and support to help investors navigate the space with confidence. All of that is great, but what I love most about Bitwise is probably their commitment to developers. Bitwise donates 10% of their ETF's profits to Bitcoin open source developers. Bitcoin developers are the unsung heroes, working tirelessly to maintain, improve, and innovate the blockchain. Their efforts ensure that Bitcoin remains true to its promise as a decentralized system that is built to last. Go to bitwisepomp.com to learn more about their ETF and other services. Once again, that's bitwisepomp.com. bitwisepomp.com. As always, remember investing is risky and carefully consider the extreme risks associated with crypto before you invest. Look, if that was your sole thing you're optimizing for, then what you would do is you would go in, you would slash government spending, you would drastically increase tariff revenue, right? You would also try to figure out other monetary revenue sources. This whole like external revenue source, not only tariffs, but there's probably other things you can do. You could easily monetize the balance sheet. You could sell off. I mean, it's something like we have thousands of U.S. government buildings that are unoccupied. Why is the government holding all those buildings? Just sell them. Let people build things with them, right? So all of that, but here's the piece, and I think that probably you and I vehemently agree on. The government isn't just here to have a balanced budget. It also has certain services that it provides or, other things that it looks at. And so balanced budget is really, really important. But it can't be, fanatical pursuit of just a balanced budget without looking at other things. But I think I probably lean more towards a lot of the quote unquote other things. It's like crazy nonsense, right? It's just like, why are we wasting money? Stop wasting money. Don't cut the core services, but stop wasting money. And if you go and you look at some of these programs, I mean, DOGE is tweeting this stuff publicly.
Yeah.
They're just saying, hey, look, here's the contracts that we're canceling. I've never seen that kind of transparency.
And like I told you, I think this used to be the work of investigative journalists who specialize in political reporting, but a lot of those people have been cut. So now an entity like DOGE is entering and quote unquote exposing the waste.
Do you want to know one of the things I think that could be really interesting?
What?
Is there's been a lot of people who said, oh, these people tend to be more Republican leaning because of the Republican administration. They should have a couple of Democrat, kind of folks that go with them so that it's more bipartisan. I think I saw Mark Cuban and maybe Ro Khanna, I can't remember.
To go with the DOGE team?
Yeah, so like when the DOGE team goes in, right now, a lot of people are painting it as like, here come the Republican, government spending cutters or whatever. Well, what if you had a more bipartisan thing, like have some Democrats go?
Great.
Well, it may be great, but also it may slow down DOGE because there becomes like the political kind of misalignment. But what I do think would be really interesting is if you could find a couple of these independent journalists, not mainstream journalists, right? Because there's too much bureaucracy inside those organizations. But if you went and you found well-respected independent journalists and you said, come with us, help us document this. We're going to do the work. Your job is to document it. I think that you would have this massive explosion of interest because people would say, okay, hold on a second here. Now we're at least seeing what's happening, not just the end result of we cancel these contracts, but this person is able to constantly do that. So what does that look like? It's kind of like the White House press corps. Imagine if DOGE had a press corps where they did 2 or 3 press conferences a day where they basically said, hey, this morning, here's what we found. Okay, this afternoon, here's what we found. We're going to come back tomorrow. Here's what we're going to do. And they just kept doing that over and over and over again. They would dominate headlines. They would get people's support behind them. And then all of a sudden you would have these independent journalists that are actually covering what are these contracts? Who's benefiting from this stuff? That is kind of the level 2 or level 3 of this whole work that I just don't think that they're there yet.
I got to say, I am no conspiracy theorist, but that is crazy that the web searches in DC are spiking for criminal defense attorneys. That's wild. Why are they doing that? I mean, I guess if you think that they're going to come after you for something,
well, there's a couple
you're being
of things.
Proactive.
There's a couple of things in DC. 4,000 homes got listed for sale, which crashed the housing market. The average home in DC lost $130,000 to $140,000 worth of value. The average home. That's how much inventory got put on the market. So these are people who are taking, the severance payments. They're getting fired, et cetera. The second thing is unemployment is already spiking in DC. Obviously, people are losing their jobs. The increased search results for paper shredding, criminal defense attorneys, all these things, whatever. The question is just like, what was the base? If it was like one person in DC was, previously looking for a criminal defense attorney and now there's 5 people, well, that huge increase obviously would lead to this, massive increase on the charts. I don't think it was one, obviously. So there is a material increase. I wish that we knew how many more people, right? Is it being driven by because 100 people did it? Or is it being driven because, 2,000 people are doing it? The kind of magnitude of the nominal number would be really important, but the trend don't lie. And so I think there's a lot of people who are just saying, hey, maybe I should start paying attention here. It looks like they're pretty serious.
It is. I think the most shocking thing to every American is at the speed at which they are operating. I think normally we're used to a new president coming in, making a bunch of promises, and then things happen slowly. But I think with the speed and decisiveness that this has happened is the most surprising thing. They're actually doing things. They're actually going in and making changes. It's wild.
Well, so there was there's a clip that just came out. It's Elon Musk, and he's talking about the fact that they have now built an XAI, the single best AI model, and the results just came out in the last 24, 48 hours, and he's sitting there and he's talking about how they did it. Now, a huge part of AI models, not getting into all the nerd talk, just kind of generally, is the more computing power that you have generally means that you can build a better model. But you got to remember, this is hardware. It's not software. It's hardware. So you got to be able to build a physical infrastructure. You got to go get all these computers linked up, et cetera. And so what he says is, okay, well, we went to a bunch of data center and they didn't have enough space. It's told us they're going to take 18 months. So we said, well, we got to do it ourselves. So we found a factory in Memphis, Tennessee. And then we realized that, okay, we're going to put all these computers in there, but there's not enough power in the building. So we went and we leased a ton of generators and we lined them up outside. And then we were able to now generate it. But now we need cooling because if it's hot because of all the generation of power, we got to cool it off. So he says that they leased 1/4 of all mobile cooling technology in the United States. And they brought it to this facility. And on the other side of the building, they lined all that up. So if you think about this, this is like classic Elon Musk, is figure out the problem, understand what the solution is, and then go execute. He has built what is believed to be the largest data center in terms of these AI training clusters. And he did it by, frankly, doing things that other people weren't willing to do.
Just don't understand how he has the time.
Well, remember, he's got really good people around him. And a huge part of it is these people are bringing to him, here's the problem, and he's making decisions, right? It's not like he's the one who's physically going and, setting up the power or liquid cooling or stuff like that.
So tell me really quick about this Fort Knox thing that Elon Musk wants to go to.
Do you know about Fort Knox?
It's a military base.
Yeah. It used to be called Camp Knox.
Okay.
Then eventually it became Fort Knox. And the general idea was at some point the United States believed in kind of the 30s that was the best place to secure the gold. And so somewhere...
The gold that the United States government holds.
Correct. They put that into Fort Knox, and Fort Knox has never really been audited on a consistent basis. And so people have long thought, well, maybe the gold's not really there. And if you go and you look
Is this like a conspiracy theory on the internet, or is this like a wide-standing American belief of people?
Well, most conspiracy theories are wide-standing American beliefs that just haven't become popular yet, according to the last 5 or 6 years. But in this case, today's episode is brought to you by Zappo. Picture this. Every time you trade Bitcoin, the spread determines how much value stays with you. That's why securing top-tier Bitcoin trading fees is key to growing your Bitcoin wealth. But what if I told you that there's a platform that lets you save up to 90% on your Bitcoin trading fees? Now, here's the kicker. Not only do they save that money, they also are dubbed the Fort Knox of Bitcoin. Zappo Bank. They're the world's first fully licensed and regulated Bitcoin and banking group, and they have been delivering a unique blend of physical and digital security for over a decade. From military-grade Swiss bunkers to cutting-edge digital protocols, they've got you covered. And now they're bringing you the kind of competitive Bitcoin trading fees typically reserved for institutional giants, right in the palm of your hand. With Zappo Bank's ultra-competitive spreads, more of your Bitcoin stays where it belongs, in your pocket. Whether you're trading big or small, every move you make is designed to boost your gains and fuel your financial future. Head to zappobank.com/pomp to join. That's XAPOBANK.com/pomp. It is very quickly going from, kind of conspiracy theory to wide held question. I wouldn't say it's a belief, but a question. And the thought process is a senator recently tweeted and said that he called up Fort Knox and said, I want to come see Fort Knox. And they said, can't come. And he said, I'm a senator of the United States. I go to military bases all the time. Why can't I come? I said, can't come. He said, I want to see the gold. I said, can't come. So he said, that's weird. And so then Elon Musk, quote, retweeted it. And he basically was like, well, we should just see the gold. I want to do a walking tour of it. And I'm going to live stream it so the American people can see their gold. Now, my general thought process is, man, would it be interesting if everyone who's worried about there not being enough gold, what if there's more gold?
What do you mean?
What if we have more gold than they're telling everyone?
Why would they not tell us?
Well, I saw somebody tweet this online. I thought it was very, very interesting. I was in Iraq. Many people who went to Iraq, Afghanistan, many other places around the world. Saddam Hussein had a lot of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Where'd that gold go? Who has that? I don't know. I have no clue. Did we sell it? We definitely confiscated it. How do I know? I have friends who have pictures literally sitting in his palace with their feet up on his desk holding a bar of gold. Where'd all that stuff go? And so, again, I don't know. It could be that we sold it off. It could be that we left it in Iraq. It could be but there's a lot of gold. And that was just his palace. That doesn't include anything else. Where did the Iraq Central Bank, where did their assets go? There's all this stuff, right? So maybe actually we've been acquiring more assets than have been publicly revealed, and it's all sitting there. And so we went to audit it. We'd be like, hey, we thought we had, $500 billion worth of gold. Actually, we've got, so much more. I don't know. And so I think that, again, it goes back to this idea of, man, the conversation's changing really quick. All of a sudden, the world's richest man, who now is, kind of like a special advisor or employee or whatever at the government, is saying, I'm just going to walk through and live stream it. This is the age of the internet. Transparency rules the day. This
is what I'm saying. I think that every sector of the government just is not used to this.
Of course not.
And it worries me that, I don't know. When something radical happens like this, people hate transparency. Why people hate the press? Usually if they're doing a good job, you don't like the media because they're doing a good job. But
you when you're thinking about this, I think you probably got like butterflies in your stomach, right? You're like, but I think you're thinking of those as you're nervous, you're worried. I think that's excitement. I think you're actually saying to yourself, imagine if.
No, it's
everyone is
I'm all about more transparency. I'm saying that it makes me nervous as to the crazies that could come out from the shadows if their stuff is now out in the open,
Oh, there's crazy. We're at the tip of the iceberg right now. He hasn't even gone into the real stuff, right? And I don't know if you've seen that now they're having the big crackdown on the PPP loans.
I need him to go investigate the aliens next.
Yeah, listen. Should
I give him the idea?
Yeah. I do think that there is a pretty interesting thing happening where people are doing a lot of crazy stuff. They're taking advantage of the government, right? We're talking about other countries with tariffs and stuff taking advantage of the United States. American citizens were taking advantage of the government. And so PPP loans, all of a sudden, there's a huge crackdown and they're going to these companies and they're saying, dude, you got tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars. You didn't need that. You literally committed wire fraud, bank fraud, like all this stuff, crackdown. Same thing has happened at the national government level. And so let's pull us back real quick to just business and investing. Hopefully, what is going to happen is we're going to have more transparency of data, which will allow people to better understand what is the national debt, what are America's assets, what is going to be the inflation rate, what are all of these economic data points that are important. Let's make sure they're real, make sure they're accurate. The second thing is that companies, both in the private sector and in the public sector, are going to start, or a public market, are going to start being really on top of it. Right. I was listening to a podcast the other day with Terry Smith. Our friend William Green did it. And he said that at one point, I forget which company, I wish I remembered, but I want to say it was like IBM. Don't hold me to that. But I think it was like IBM. He said that he was looking at their books and he called up the company and said, hey, we just can't make the math work. Like, it looks like there's like a $2 billion shortfall somewhere. What are we missing? And IBM called them back, or whatever the company was, and was like, oh, yeah, sorry, we made a mistake. In their public filing, nobody caught the math. And he was like, we just felt like maybe we're the only people who went and looked at the math.
Yeah.
Right. And that's a publicly traded company. And so it just goes back to this idea of technology is going to solve a lot of this too. Right. If we can start to just use technology systems to talk to each other, to do this, like this is the messy middle that we've got to kind of work through. But I do think eventually that we're going to get to a place where this is going to end up being okay. It's just going to be a little painful on the way, a little bumpy of a ride. But if you arrive safe at your destination, all is good in the world.
Great. That's all we got for today.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Thanks.